In today's video, I want to share my experience with caffeine. I've been using caffeine on a daily basis since I was 16 years old. I started using caffeine without really knowing what it was or what it does, what the effects are. And I very quickly got hooked on it. I started to make an association with certain products and, the way I would feel. Eventually, I came to know the source of those feelings, and that source was caffeine. So I started to realize that, oh, it's the caffeine that I actually like. And with that knowledge, I would then seek out different products that at least contained some caffeine. I kind of became addicted to caffeine very early on, and the amounts that I was using were very detrimental to my health, and I really didn't even know it. I had a tremendous amount of tension from the amount of caffeine that I was consuming. There was a lot of tension built up in my body. And that tension was really, it came from stress that I had, stressful and traumatic events that I had experienced in my childhood. But this caffeine was aggravating those conditions. Eventually, I became aware of this addiction, this problem that I had, and I significantly reduced the amount of caffeine that I started having. And I started having the amount of caffeine that I had in a very conscious way. I started to consume caffeine in a much more conscious way. Even to today, I still consume caffeine on a daily basis. And I think, I got to a point in my life where I knew that I was consuming caffeine. I was consciously consuming caffeine, and I was okay with it because I enjoy caffeine. I like the experience of caffeine. In its proper form, I think it can act as a performance enhancer for knowledge work, and it can definitely help to just be more productive. Recently, though, I've come to a new place where I feel that I am ready to move past the use of caffeine, and I'm looking at my life in terms of just where things are going in my life. So I'm about 30 years old now, and I'm imagining myself when I'm 50. And when I'm 50 years old, I really don't want to be dependent on a substance. I don't want to feel like I need to have caffeine every day. This is something that I want to address now. I want to get back to being able to utilize my own natural energy stores and have caffeine if I want caffeine. But right now, I'm completely dependent on it. I have caffeine every day, and if I didn't have caffeine, then I would have tremendous headaches, and it would significantly impact the work that I'm doing. Even stopping caffeine is very difficult. I've tried to stop caffeine, but I believe that since I've been having caffeine for about 10 years, that there's been so much change to my brain that from having this substance every day, that I think it will actually take years to rebalance the brain and rebalance the neurotransmitters to just the baseline level that they should be at. So my plan for stopping caffeine is a 6-year plan. I'm imagining that when I'm 36 years old, I would like to be free of this dependence. And what I'm doing now is, for a while, I was just tracking the amount of caffeine. I do this anyways. I'm very accurate about how much caffeine I have, but sometimes I will have a little bit more and I slip into having more caffeine. And once I have more, I kind of like stick to having more. So an example would be I started having just black tea. And then I had 2 bags of black tea a day. But then one day I had 3 bags of black tea. And I was like, all right, this is a better fit for me. I like 3 bags of black tea. Then I got into having 4 bags of black tea. And once I had 4, it was like 4 bags of black tea every day. And that was where I was at. So now what I've been doing is I've been quantifying the exact amount of caffeine that I have every day. I have a little scale and I measure out the amount of caffeine that I have every day. And every day or every other day, I reduce the amount by a very small amount so that it's not really noticeable. I notice it somewhat. Sometimes I start to get a minor headache, but when I do that, I balance myself out at that level. So I will have wherever I'm at, I will have that for a few days, and I just balance myself out so that I don't notice it. And subconsciously, I know it, and like I know that I'm tricking my brain into doing this. I'm tricking my brain by reducing the amount of caffeine. So there are two benefits, I think, to this approach. One is that you allow your entire biology to adjust slowly over time. Because if you go from having caffeine every day, let's say you're having 300 milligrams of caffeine every day, and then all of a sudden you go to zero, that is a huge change for your biology, because your biology is used to having this substance every day. It's getting the substance every day, and it has changed the way that your brain has changed the way that it works, because it's expecting this substance. So by just continuing to feed your brain with the caffeine, you're applying the substance to the natural rhythms, the natural mechanisms that are playing out. The brain is expecting it. But what you're doing is you're continuing to feed that in every day, but you're just reducing the amount slightly. You're giving your brain a chance to make the adjustments. That's one of the benefits. Just the reduction of the feelings of the withdrawal symptoms, because caffeine is physically addictive, and it's also psychologically addictive. The other benefit of doing things this way, of like being very accurate, very precise, very conscious, is that I have found that just by bringing that energy to the process of having caffeine, it actually allows me to go deep into the subconscious and even the conscious mechanisms behind the desire to have caffeine. This actually was what gave me the mental fortitude to want to move past this. Okay, I became aware of my psychological need for caffeine. And for me, I realized that the underlying the underlying psychological mechanism behind the caffeine is this idea that things aren't good enough the way that they are, that my energy levels are not good enough the way that they are. My performance is not good enough the way that it is. I need something extra. This was much more potent. This feeling was much stronger when I was younger. When I was in my early 20s, I had a lot of confusion about myself, about life, about what I was doing. I did not have a sense of security, and I was seeking some type of security. And the security that I found was in being able to control my mental state and my energy levels. So for me, I'd wake up and I would just kind of like imagine the day without this like elevated euphoric state of consciousness that I could achieve through the caffeine. And I had too much of it. So I was like full of stress, full of anxiety, and made me feel terrible. But I didn't have the maturity to see that I was actually causing that from this deep need of finding security in my life. So now today, I have been working a lot on my goals, my priorities, what brings me joy in life, what are the things that I need to do to maximize my sense of fulfillment in life. And I've really just come to the realization that I want to just be me. I want to live out the fullest expression of myself and find my authentic self. And I feel that the only way to do that is by tapping into what my body just naturally has to offer, and not to be dependent on some external source of energy, source of inspiration, source of an altered state of consciousness. I do enjoy using herbs for performance enhancement, and I believe that there could be a way to use caffeine consciously, to use caffeine for all of the positive benefits that it has. It's just that at this particular point in my life and at this time in my life, I know that there is a deep source of pain, really, around the caffeine. And it's something that I want to address and move on from. So maybe you can relate to this, and maybe, this might bring some awareness to the habits and routines that you have around food, around substances. And I hope that these strategies can help you.